Today's shir, Wednesday, Chav Gimel Kislev, is Perek Chi, Perek Hasidi of Klei Hamikdash, and I'd like to address an interesting question that I had, which led me to do a little research on today's Rambam. I've always had this question. If you remember in yesterday's shir, in Tuesday's shir, we learned in Perek Zayin of Hilchos Klei Hamikdash that there was a mamuna on chaylim. There was a mamuna, somebody in charge of taking care of kohenim that were sick. Why were kohenim sick? So the Rambam writes in Halacha Tezvav, in Halacha Yudalid of Perek Zayin, kohenim mipnei shem eindom al harispa tamid. They're standing barefoot on the marble, on the stone floor, and va'echlin basar harbe, and they eat a lot of meat. They don't have on b'shas Avodah. They don't have during their service. They only have a linen or a type of shirt or beged, thin beged. And they're sick, and therefore you need a doctor. You need a memuna. Who checks them out to marpa, etc., etc. I had a very interesting question while I was learning today's Rambam, and that is, and it always intrigued me, can a kohen wear a sweater? Can a kohen wear a coat? Can a kohen wear something? Why does he have to suffer? Yishalayim in the winter, especially on the top of Yerushalayim where the Har HaBayis is very cold. And again, like the Rambam makes it clear, they only wore a chaluk, they only wore a tunic, and they were barefoot. Question is, can they wear a sweater? Can they wear a jacket? Can they wear a fur coat, etc.? So it's not so pashut, the answer. And in today's Rambam, we're gonna discover a little bit about it. In the Rambam in Perek Yud Halacha Hey begins. So just like a kohen who is lacking begadim is chayiv misa, kacha yoser begadim. Same thing as somebody who has a extra beged. So the Rambam says, what does he call an extra beged? A yitur begadim. Shalabash shtei kutamis. He wears two tunics, two of the special Kohen tunics, shirts, or two of the special belts. Or a Kohen Hedyot who wears one of the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. He's mechalel misa. He's mechalel the avodah, and he's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. That's in halacha hey. In halacha tes, the Rambam has another halacha, also concerning begadim or lack of begadim, etc. Kohen shalaka betzbai, a kohen that had a wound on his finger. He hurt himself. He was shechting, and he cut himself. Mutar licher chala gemi b'Shabbos. He's allowed to put a gemi. A gemi, I assume, is some type of a bandage on Shabbos. A beged she'ein by shalosh al shalosh, or if it's a beged that doesn't have 3/3, which is the gedder, as we know, those that learn Gemara and Shnayos know that a beged less than 3/3 is not mekabel tumim because it's not considered a beged. V'hu shalayochitz hagemi beged bein b'sari l'kli b'shas avodah. The bandage, the gemi that is on his finger, cannot come between him and the keli. Cannot come between him and the keli. The Ravid argues on it. If we have time, we'll discuss the Ravid. I doubt we'll have time. So in any case, the Achronim bring out that there's a stira between in these two halachas in the Rambam. In halacha hey, the Rambam says that he has to have two kutzanyos or two avnetim, or a kohen hedyot who wears a beged of a kohen gadol, then he's mechol. So mashma clearly, why doesn't the Rambam say if he wears another piece of clothing, if he wears his favorite shirt or his favorite something else? So the Rambam says clearly that the only type of Yitur Begadim is Chayiv is if it's another type of Bigdei Kahuna. But if you wore a beged that's not Bigdei Kahuna, it's not Chayiv Mishum Yitur Begadim. However, when it comes to halacha, later on, what we said before, that even if a tziltzul cotton, even if it's a something that is a little excuse me, even if it's a tziltzul cotton, a little piece of little nothing, he's chayiv. He's chayiv on he's chayiv because of a chatzitza. Yeah. So the question is why. So therefore, it's a murder kistira. On the one hand, it says only if it's a next big tikkun. On the other hand, even if it's tziltzul cotton, is also chaytzitz. So the question, before we answer the question, we could say a shtickle lumdus over here. We have a question. How come on this Rambam, on the original Rambam of Halacha Hey, how come when a Kohen puts on two begadim, he's chayiv? We have a klal min b'minay ein chaytzitz, and there's another klal we know in another area of the Rambam of Avodah, it's brought down in the Gemara, that if a Kohen when he needs a mizrak, a pan, and instead of using only one pan, he uses a second pan. So the Gemara says, and the Rambam brings it down, that it's not chayiv because min b'minay ein chaytzitz. It's two of the same together. So the bottom mizrak is not chaytzitz between him and the inside mizrak, the inside pan, because even though he's not touching the original mizrak, the inside pan, because min b'minay and chaytzitz, it's as if it's one thing. So the question becomes, how come if a kohen wears two bigdei kahuna, two tunics, one on top of the other, how come he's chayiv? How come he's chayiv? We know that Legabe is similar. One of probably the closest example that we can have in this is the Isser of Bal Teisif. A person is not allowed to add to mitzvahs. So, for example, he's not allowed to put on two pairs of tefillin if his intent is to have two pairs of tefillin. We know that when a person wears both pairs of tefillin, one is in the proper place and one isn't in the proper place, so it's not chaytzitz. But it's as if it's not chaytzitz. So the same thing over here. Who cares that on top of his original tunic, he's wearing another tunic? It's nothing. It's not something that we should say. Yitur begadim is only if he wears the other beged on his flesh, because the source of the Isser is al besara. It has to be connected to his skin. It has to be between him and his skin. So if he's wearing something else, so why is it that the Rambam paskins that if you wear two begadim, one on top of the other, you chayiv misa? So we must, so we must say that we must say that that this is a special din in Bigdei Kahuna. The special din in Bigdei Kahuna is that he actually, if he's wearing two kutanos, one on top of the other, so it's not it's even though it's min b'minay, but the fact remains that since it's hagufa, since it's min b'minay ein chaytzitz, so it's as if he's wearing the top kutanis, the top tunic. And therefore, what ends up happening is that there's another another kutanis between the top tunic and his basar. So since there's a din that there shouldn't be anything connect between him and his flesh, what happens is, unfortunately, is that the min b'minay ruins it. The fact that he's wearing two kutanis at once accomplishes that there is a middle kutanis, there's a middle tunic that is chaytzit bein besara. So what would happen in our original shaila? What would happen in our original shaila if he's wearing a tunic, and on top of the tunic he's wearing a sweater? It's l'chayda according to this Rambam, he's not over mishum yitu begadim, because the original tunic, the big kahuna, is something that is between that is not, there's not no intervening substance between him and his skin, and what's going on top of the kutanis doesn't really affect him. So l'chayda, that's why the Rambam learns that the only isser of yitur begadim is when there's two kutanis, because since min b'minei einei chaytzitz, so therefore there are two kutanis going on between that he's wearing, and if in fact there is a kutain, there is a tunic that's going between him and the top tunic. So therefore, the mitzad yisur of chatzitza is not usher, so to speak. Or I'm sorry, mitzad yisur of yitur begadim, it's not usher. Comparing it to Baal Taisif, it's not usher because it's not chaytzit, but mitzad the inyan of shloyeh davar beinay leben besari, he has a problem because the middle one, the inside one, is beinay leben besari. And that would only work on two big day kahuna. But if you would be wearing something on top of it, it wouldn't work. Nevertheless, the Rambam does paskin that they only wore a chaluk, they only wore something. So it kind of remains with a shtickle saruchian. I know it sounds strange, but it sounds with a shtickle saruchian, because the Rambam does indicate that the only isser of yitur begadim, why doesn't he say Kohen shalavash beged? Why does he have to emphasize Kohen shalavash shtei kutanos shnei avneitim? Must be that the only isser of yitur begadim is for the big day kahuna. And to answer the stira between the what we started with halacha hey and halacha yud, then in halacha hey he says that only big day kahuna is considered yitur begadim, and in halacha yud he says that as long as it's not a beged of shalish al shalish gemi l'chayda, if it's not, even if it would be beged according to what we just explained, even if it would be beged shalish al shalish l'chayda, it wouldn't be usher. So why does the Rambam say that a beged that is more than shalish al shalish, which is considered a beged, if he puts it on his finger, he's over? We just said that the only thing he's over is two big dekuna. So we must answer as follows. The answer has to be that there's two gedarim, two problems with adding clothes or taking away clothes of a kohen. One problem is wearing clothes on top of clothes, meaning two avnetim or two kutanas, and that's only in the place of beged, and that the Rambam holds is only when it's a big day kahuna. On the other hand, in a place where there's no beged, in the place where there's no chiyuv to wear a beged, anything is chaytzitz. Any beged is chaytzitz. So, for example, in our discussion, if you were to l'chayda, this is all theoretical because the Rambam writes clearly that they only wore a chaluk. If he would wear a sweater, l'chayda al pi pashtus, according to the Rambam, he wouldn't be over a isser of yitur begadim. But if he wore gloves, which is on his fingers, which is on his things, in addition to the fact that there's something chaytzitz between his fingers and the keli. So let's say he wore gloves that the fingers are cut off. It only covers his wrist, or only covers his a part of his hand. According to the Rambam, if he wears gloves, even if it's on his hands, he is over, because if you need a gemi which is less than shalosh al shalosh. So we must answer the stira very clearly, that when it comes to a place where there's begadim, when it comes to a place that has clothing, so the only isser is other big day kahuna or a big day kain gadol. If it comes to a place where there's no begadim, so anything is asur. So I saw one of the Achronim writes that the reason is because there's two geder of chatzitza. There's a geder of umidayvad, which means that there has to be nothing intervening between him and the clothing. There has to be a clear, the Rambam writes, you have to make sure there's no nima, there's no dust, etc., etc. Nothing has to come between the skin of the kohen and his clothing. That's a clear pasuk. On the other hand, there's another chatzitza, that there can't be a intervening substance between him and the keli. And I saw another pshat, that it's a stab. It's a stab at the dark. He doesn't really bring a source, but he with this he tries to answer the Ravid, the Ten L'Chachma V'Yechkamay, that the Indian of a chatzitza, which is explained in Halacha Yud, that only has to do with the in the place, like we said before, where there's no chatzitza, where there's no begadim, is because there's a special din that a kohen's hand, or the place of the kohen, the skin of the kohen has to be open to the avir ha'azara. He has to be into the avir ha'azara, and he wants to answer various things of that, but I have no raya, so I can't say. Before we conclude, I want to ask a shaila that I haven't really been able to find an answer. Maybe it's a klutz kasha. I don't know, but I tried. It seems I tried looking at it. Maybe somebody who's listening can correct me on how I'm wrong, or how I'm learning wrong, or maybe there's another answer. The Rambam writes, very interesting, in Halacha Vav. It says by Big Kahuna al Besore elevation. It has to be al besari, that there has to be nothing substance. Etc. Says the Rambam lefichach, since there can't be anything intervening between the kohen's skin and the begadim, and a kohen yochel labid with tefillin shel yad. The kohen cannot work with tefillin shel yad, because the tefillin shel yad is chaytzitz. Avol shel roish, but the head ain't a chaytzitz, is not chaytzitz. The imratza lanicham. And if he wants to, he can put it on. This, we grew up knowing that the famous Gemara in Yuma, and that Sarah, I think if Rashi brings it down in Chumash, that there was a space between the mitznefes and the tzitz. Sarah hayanira ben mitznefes letzitz shesham hayamaniach tefillin. And we have the pictures that we see in all the new where they show us the Kohen Gadol. He's wearing tefillin. I have actually here a picture. I tried looking it up. You can see here. You see the Rambam is wearing the Kohen Gadol. It's a clear picture. It's a perfect picture. The Kohen Gadol is wearing tefillin. So what's pshat imratza lanicham? I don't understand that Rambam. So the commentary say that taka there's no chiyuv, but they did wear it. But that's not my kasha. My kasha is like this. We have a klal. It's a very important klal, a very famous klal, that if it's lemitzvah and chaytzitz, kol should be lemitzvah and chaytzitz. If you do something and face you're holding, you need to face the lulav that is good with the material of the lulav. It's not chaytzitz, because kol b'minei and chaytzitz and kol mitzvah and chaytzitz. A mitzvah is not chaytzitz. So how can the tefillin be shel yad be a chatzitza, unless you want to say that there's a special mamish of gzeres hakosu that al b'sarei. But there's another kasha. The Gemara says that, and it's a famous Gemara we all know, that when a person wears a shel rosh, he has to wear a shel yad. Kol makam yesh tayim. If you're wearing that the shel yad is a hadama to the shel rosh. That's how the Rebbe answers the famous in Zich and Zvarim the question on the Rambam. How come he puts first shel rosh and then shel yad in the mitzvah? The seder is fakert, because we know that once you have a tefillin, the only reason, so to speak, we have a tefillin shel yad is when you have the Gemara says that as long as you have tefillin shel rosh, you have to have shtayim. So how can the Kohen Gadol wear a tefillin shel rosh without tefillin shel yad? How can he wear tefillin shel without tefillin shel yad? And how come the tefillin shel yad is chaytzitz? It's a mitzvah. So if I'm learning wrong, please correct me. And thank you very much.